All right, welcome in everyone. Ready to do a deep dive on Bob Camblin.
Let's do it. Looking forward to this one.
This is a really cool one because we've got kind of a hodgepodge of different stuff. We got some quotes from Camblin himself, a biography, even a YouTube video essay. This is going to be fun. This is like we're piecing together like a puzzle who this guy really was.
Yeah, and that's what makes this one so fun, right?
Yep.
It's not just a straight biography. We get to see how he thought, how other people view his art.
Absolutely.
So it should be a fun one.
So let's start with these quotes. You sent over Bob Camblin quotes and other mysteries. And honestly, some of these are wild. I've picked out a couple that I really want to go over.
Okay.
One of them, this is a good one. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. It's like he's saying science, the smallest building blocks of the universe, magic, these big, huge forces, they both kind of feed creativity.
Yeah, and I think that really gets to the heart of Camblin's approach to art.
Okay.
He wasn't someone who saw strict boundaries between different disciplines or ways of thinking.
Right.
He was constantly drawing these connections, looking for the underlying unity, and it really does this idea come through in his art. When you see these unexpected juxtapositions, these different styles and influences.
So you're looking at one of his paintings and you're like, whoa, where's he going with this? Is this sci-fi? Is this mythology? Like what is going on here?
Yeah, and that's what makes it so captivating. You never quite know what to expect.
Yeah, totally. Oh, here's another one.
Correct.
I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe. I think that will let me enjoy miracles on both sides of science and magic, and the nuances of the smear between the whiteness and the blackness, and hope that I can be around when the two meet in the near future and we have an intensely bright gray.
That one takes a second.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So what's he saying here?
Well, on the surface, it's this kind of humorous, this self-deprecating language, this perfectly average view.
Right.
But if you dig a little deeper, he's talking about embracing complexity.
Okay.
Finding beauty in the gray areas, the spaces where opposites meet and blend. It's not about being this or that.
So it's not about being wishy-washy. It's about like appreciating the full spectrum,
Right.
And not just like black and white. You're saying like, yeah, this kind of connects back to what we were just talking about. Like he doesn't like labels, he doesn't like boxes. He wants to explore the messiness.
Exactly, and that openness to ambiguity is one of the things that makes his work so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
He's not trying to tell you what to think. He's inviting you to join him in the exploration.
Right.
Ask your own questions. Come to your own conclusions.
Like, hey, come along for the ride. Let's just see where this goes. That's kind of cool, actually.
It's a very refreshing approach.
Okay, I got one more quote.
All right.
This one's a little more cryptic, but let's see what we can do with it. The gate stays open. The fence is broken. He keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry. Yet he has faith. He looks in all directions. If he could only see all around all at once.
Whoa.
What are we doing with this?
I think this quote speaks to this feeling of searching that's so central to Camblin's art.
Okay.
He could be the artist himself. It could be anyone on a quest for knowledge, for meaning.
Right.
This quarry is unknown. We don't know how big it is. It's undefined.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that suggests that maybe the search itself is more important than the destination.
Okay.
That journey is what really matters.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, so we've got a good sense of his philosophy, his way of looking at things. So to get a little more of like a timeline to see how this plays out in his career, let's go to the biography that you sent over, Bob Camblin biography.pdf, and this covers a lot.
Yeah, it does.
One thing I noticed right away, this guy, he was everywhere.
He was.
Like he was showing at, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Whitney.
Huge, big names.
But then also like smaller galleries, universities, even some kind of out there places.
Like he was deliberately avoiding being pigeonholed.
Yeah.
Didn't want to limit himself to just one type of venue, one type of audience. Wanted his work to be seen.
Well, and it's interesting to think about how the setting affects how you perceive the art.
Right.
Like if you see something in this huge museum, it's very serious, it's very important. If you see the same piece in, I don't know, like a coffee shop, you might view it totally differently.
Absolutely. It speaks to his understanding of how context shapes our understanding of art. Makes me wonder if he chose these different venues to challenge expectations, make people think about the art in new ways.
So he wasn't just creating the art. He was thinking about how people were going to experience it, how it was going to interact with the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to Laura's fan mail, this drawing that we've got the YouTube video about, and also the description from that art book. But before we get into what they're saying, what were your first thoughts when you saw this drawing?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah.
Um,
Weird, right?
it is it's abstract. It's kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
Um, when I first looked at it, I really had to sit with it for a while. I didn't quite know what to make of it. You've
Yep.
got these two figures, the one that's kind of shadowy, almost ghostly.
Yeah.
You've got this other one, it's more solid. He's holding a paintbrush.
Right.
Then the background, there's all these scribbles and words and little sketches. It's like he was just letting his mind wander on the page.
Right. He was brainstorming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's that big red X just jumps right out at you.
Yeah.
It's definitely not your typical portrait.
No, it's definitely not a landscape.
It's not, but that's what's so interesting about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Remember how Camblin talked about embracing the in-between, the nuances, the smear between black and white?
Yeah.
This drawing, this feels like that to me. It's embracing the messiness, the complexity.
It's like a visual representation of the creative process itself. Like,
Yeah.
here's all the stuff, all the junk, all the bad ideas.
The revisions, the false starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you've hit on something really important there.
And then there's that big red X, and I'm like, is that a cancellation?
Oh.
Is he rejecting something, or is it like a marking, like a
Yeah.
turning point?
Yeah, is it a decision?
I don't know. Okay, so we've got Camblin's words, his biography, our own kind of first impressions of Laura's fan mail. And let's see what other people have to say about this thing. Let's start with that YouTube video essay. This one's called Laura's Fan Mail, and it's on a channel called Incomplete Works. I was really impressed with this, actually. For such a short video, they packed a lot in.
I agree. It's a great example of how even these short videos can offer some really insightful analyses of art.
Yeah.
And I think this one specifically makes some connections that will resonate with what we've already talked about.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. Let's hear it.
So they start by breaking down those visual elements that you mentioned, the two figures, the background, that X,
Yeah.
and they really emphasize this contrast between the shadowy figure and the more solid guy, the one with the paintbrush.
Right. Yeah.
Almost like these figures represent different aspects of the creative process itself.
Okay.
They connect that duality back to some of Camblin's quotes.
Hmm.
The one about science and magic being two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Right.
Right. Like, don't limit yourself. Explore all the possibilities.
Exactly. And remember how Camblin talked about that smear between black and white, those in-between spaces?
Yeah.
They suggest that Laura's fan mail is a visual representation of that idea.
Okay.
You've got these two contrasting figures, this chaotic energy in the background, like he's showing us the messy inner workings of the mind.
And what about that X? Like, do they address that?
They do, and they offer a really interesting interpretation of it. They connect it to the I Ching and hexagram for youthful folly.
Okay, so full disclosure, I don't know anything about the H.
Oh, that's okay. So the I Ching is this ancient Chinese text. It's used for divination, kind of for philosophical guidance.
Okay.
It's based on a system of 64 hexagrams, and they all represent different situations, different states of being.
Okay.
Hexagram 4, youthful folly, new beginnings, a time of learning and exploration.
All right, so how does that connect to this drawing?
Well, the video suggests that contemplative figure, the one with the paintbrush, he's the seeker. He's on this journey of self-discovery, maybe an artist early in his career. The shadowy figure, that's like the teacher, the guide. It's the unknown, intuition, inspiration.
It's like that quote we talked about earlier, right? The he who's searching but doesn't know what he's searching for.
Exactly. He's on the quest. The destination's uncertain.
And that youthful folly idea is like, it's about being open to new experiences, to not knowing what's going to happen, even making mistakes.
Yes. And that's what I think is so great about this interpretation.
Yeah.
It lines up perfectly with what we know about Camblin's philosophy, his whole approach.
Totally.
He wasn't afraid to experiment, to play with ideas, to push the boundaries.
And he probably made a ton of mistakes,
Oh, I'm sure. And you know what? That's part of the process.
And it makes me think of, he had another quote, the symbolists were right that in explaining something it was killed. And I feel like that's really relevant here.
That's so true.
Like if we try to say, this is what Laura's fan mail means, we'd be missing the point.
Absolutely. It's about that journey, the exploration, the meaning unfolds as you spend time with it.
So he wants us to participate, not just look at it. He wants us to be part of the whole thing.
Exactly. Okay, so the YouTube video, it gives us this really compelling interpretation, right?
Yeah.
But we also have that description from the art book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 2, and it seems to be coming at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting about this one is they really focus on the title Laura's fan mail. Like
Oh.
they're really into the wordplay.
Yeah, they suggest it's a commentary on fandom, identity, the creative process.
Okay.
Like maybe that male figure represents the muse, a devoted fan,
Yeah.
responding to Laura with, total devotion.
Yeah, I love that fan mail, like fan as in, someone who's a fan of something, but also like a fan that creates air.
Yeah,
Like he's fanning the flames and also being blown away.
that's a great point.
It's like being in control and also out of control at the same time.
Yes, that agency and that surrender of the creative process,
Yeah.
it's all there.
Yeah. Okay, so this book, it also makes some interesting connections to other artists, right?
Yeah, it does.
Like Leonora Carrington, Dorothea Tanning, and Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I don't really know much about their work.
Oh, well, so Leonora Carrington and Dorothea Tanning, they were both surrealist painters, known for their dreamlike imagery.
Okay.
They often explored the subconscious female identity, this blurring between reality and fantasy.
So these are artists who are interested in the hidden depths of the mind, the world of dreams and imagination.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, then you've got Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was a neo-expressionist painter. He really rose to fame in the 80s.
Okay.
His work is often really raw, energetic, politically charged, uses text, symbols, found objects.
So it sounds like even though these artists, they all worked in different styles, came from different backgrounds,
Yeah.
there's this like thread that connects them, this like willingness to be different, to push boundaries, to explore the complexity of being human.
Yeah. Yes. And I think the fact that the book even draws these comparisons, it suggests that Camblin was part of a larger conversation that was happening.
Yeah.
In the art world, this movement toward more personal, more expressive art.
So we've got all these different artists across different generations, different movements, but they're all wrestling with the same questions about identity, representation, the role of art in the world. So now I'm curious, now that we've looked at these different interpretations, what's your take on Laura's fan mail? Like, how do you see all this fitting together?
It's clear this drawing's multi-layered. There's not one right answer. The YouTube videos focus on duality.
Yeah.
And the I Ching, I think, is a great way to understand how creativity works.
Right.
The art book, it gives us the wordplay, the connection to these other artists. It helps us see where Camblin fits in the bigger picture of art history.
Right. So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about, like, they both add something. And I think that's what Camblin would have wanted. Remember, he was all about encouraging his students to find their own voices, to do their own thing.
He was all about sparking a conversation.
Yeah.
Inspiring people to see things in new ways.
Not giving them the answer.
Right.
Okay, so I think it's clear that Bob Camblin was more than just a painter, more than a sculptor. He was a philosopher. He was a provocateur. He was someone who just wanted people to think for themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, before we go, I want to circle back to one more quote from Bob Camblin, Quotes and Other Mysteries. I think this one really kind of sums him up. Ecology of art. I keep telling my students to do your own thing. Know thyself, but I never thought about using the example of ecology and the people that study it. One can hear many valid reasons that an artist should be this or that. Why should he be involved socially, politically, or with religious attitudes? And some should, but rather than judge, why not assume that in really trying to do his thing, it may have something to do with our balance of nature? Some may serve, who only seem to indulge themselves. Once upset, this balance can wreak havoc. Man is the worst offender in changing his physical world. Maybe the artists are some of the few that are fighting for existence when everything around us wishes us to be in, for, or about. And yet he's just being not in conflict, not destroying, trying to be in a world gone very wrong, and he may have no effect whatsoever, and eventually becomes extinct. Camblin, circa 1968. That's a lot, but there's so much in there.
Oh, it's pure Camblin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just packed with passion, with conviction, and a little bit of that defiance that he was known for.
Yeah, yeah.
He's saying, don't underestimate art. Even when it seems like it's just for the artist, there's a ripple effect. There's a connection to something bigger. And that's what he means by ecology of art, right?
Okay.
Artists, they have this role in the world. They're maintaining balance, a balance that's easily disrupted when everyone's pressured to fit in.
Oh, I love that. So it's like, in nature, you need all these different plants and animals to create a thriving ecosystem.
Right.
And maybe it's the same with art. We need all these different expressions, all these different voices to have a healthy culture. I
Exactly.
like that a lot.
And that idea, it ties back to our conversation about Laura's fan mail.
Oh, okay.
Remember, embracing that youthful folly, the
Yeah.
experimentation, being okay with making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and how the art book highlighted that connection to surrealism and neo-expressionism, pushing
Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah.
Maybe those are all expressions of ecology of art.
Yeah, that's cool. So this idea that to be truly creative, you gotta have freedom.
Yeah.
You can't just be told what to do.
And it's not just about making pretty pictures, it's about engaging with the world,
Right.
asking those tough questions, shaking things up a little bit.
Right, right. It's about using art to explore, to discover yourself, to talk about what's happening in society, to understand the world.
I think you got it.
So as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Bob Camblin, what do you what do you think is the most important thing for people listening to take away from this? What do we want them to remember?
Well, for me, it's about embracing that do your own thing.
Yeah.
He was such a champion for individuality,
Hmm.
finding that unique voice, expressing it. And I think that's something that resonates with everyone, no matter what your passion is, whether it's art or music or whatever.
Right.
Find your thing and don't be afraid to really do it.
And I think another thing is art isn't always about finding easy answers or the right interpretation. It's about the mystery, the ambiguity. Like you said, don't explain it or you'll kill it.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to feel it. You got to let it move you.
Yeah, trust your intuition.
Yeah, exactly. So to everyone listening, as you explore the world of art or even your own creative side, remember Bob Camblin. Remember what he stood for: individuality, experimentation, embracing the unknown. Don't be afraid to get messy, to make mistakes, to follow your own path. You never know where it's going to lead.
That's a great note to end on.
All right, so thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank
We
you.
hope you've enjoyed it,
It's been a pleasure.
and we hope you'll keep exploring Bob Camlin's art and ideas long after this is over. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
So they start by breaking down those visual elements that you described, the two figures, the background clutter, that striking red X, and they emphasize the contrast between the shadowy figure and the more solid, contemplative male figure holding a paintbrush. It's like these two figures represent different aspects of the creative process itself.
Right, and they connect that idea of duality back to some of Camblin's quotes, especially the one about science and magic. Seeing both as valid paths to understanding, it's like he's saying, hey, why limit yourself? Explore all the possibilities.
And remember how Camlin talked about finding beauty in that smear between black and white, those in-between spaces? Well, the video suggests that Laura's fan mail is a visual representation of that idea. You've got these two contrasting figures, and then the background is filled with all this chaotic energy, almost like he's showing us the messy inner workings of the creative mind.
Makes you wonder if that red X is significant too. Is it a cancellation, a rejection of something, or maybe it's a marking, a point of decision, a turning point in the creative process?
That's a great question, and the video actually offers an interesting interpretation of the X, connecting it to the I Ching and hexagram for youthful folly.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm not super familiar with the I Ching. Could you break that down for me a little?
Sure. The I Ching is an ancient Chinese text that's used for divination and philosophical guidance. It's based on a system of 64 hexagrams, each representing a different life situation or state of being. Hexagram 4, youthful folly, is associated with new beginnings, a time of learning and exploration.
So how does that relate to Camblin's drawing?
Well, the video suggests that the contemplative figure, the one with the paintbrush, represents the seeker, someone who is on a journey of self-discovery, perhaps even an artist early in their career. And the shadowy figure could be seen as a kind of teacher or guide, representing the unknown, the realm of intuition and inspiration.
I'm starting to see the connection. It's like that quote we talked about earlier. The gate stays open, the fence is broken, he keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry. The artist is on a quest, but the destination is uncertain. And that youthful folly, it's about being open to new experiences, embracing the unknown, even making mistakes along the way.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this interpretation. It aligns perfectly with what we know about Camblin's philosophy and his approach to art. He wasn't afraid to experiment, to play with ideas, to push boundaries, and he seemed to embrace the idea that true creativity often involves a certain amount of risk-taking. and a willingness to let go of control.
You know, as we're talking, I'm remembering another one of his quotes. The symbolists were right that in explaining something, it was killed. I feel like that's really relevant here, too.
Absolutely. Trying to pin down a single definitive meaning for Laura's fan mail would be missing the point entirely. It's about the journey, the exploration, the layers of meaning that unfold the more time you spend with the work.
It's like Camblin is inviting us to be active participants in the creative process, not just passive observers. He wants us to bring our own experiences, our own interpretations to the table.
I couldn't agree more. So the YouTube video gives us a really compelling interpretation of Laura's fan mail, one that resonates with Camblin's own words and his overall approach to art. But we also have that description from the art book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 2, which seems to offer a slightly different perspective.
Right. And what I found really interesting about the book's description is that it focuses a lot on the title, Laura's Fan Mail, and the way it plays with words and ideas.
Exactly. They suggest it could be a commentary on fandom, identity, and the creative process, with the male figure possibly representing an idealized muse or devoted fan responding to this Laura with artistic devotion.
I was particularly intrigued by their interpretation of the male figure as a fan male, playing on the word fan as both an admirer and an object that creates air currents. It's like he's simultaneously fanning the flames of his own passion and being swept away by the force of his inspiration.
That's a great observation. It speaks to that sense of both agency and surrender that's often involved in the creative process. The artist is in control, but also at the mercy of forces larger than himself.
And the book also makes some interesting connections to other artists who are exploring similar themes, like Leonora Carrington, Dorothea Tanning, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. I have to admit, I'm not super familiar with their work. Could you give us a quick overview? I know the listener might be in the same boat.
Of course, Leonora Carrington and Dorothea Tanning were both surrealist painters, known for their dreamlike imagery and use of symbolism. They often explored themes of the subconscious mind, female identity, and the blurring of boundaries between reality and fantasy.
Okay, so we're talking about artists who are interested in exploring the hidden depths of the psyche, the world of dreams and imagination. That definitely seems to align with Camblin's own sensibilities.
It does, doesn't it? And then you have Jean-Michel Basquiat, a neo-expressionist painter who rose to fame in the 1980s. His work is often raw, energetic, and politically charged, incorporating text, symbols, and found objects into his paintings.
So while these artists might have worked in different styles and came from different backgrounds, there seems to be a common thread running through their work, a willingness to challenge conventions, to push boundaries, and to explore the complexities of human experience.
Precisely. And the fact that the art book draws these comparisons suggests that Camblin was part of a larger conversation happening in the art world, a movement towards more personal, more expressive, and often more politically engaged forms of art.
It's amazing to think about how all of these artists, even across different generations and movements, were grappling with similar questions about identity, representation, and the role of art in society. And it makes me wonder, now that we've looked at these different interpretations, what's your take on Laura's fan mail? How do you see these interpretations fitting together?
That's a great question. It's clear that this drawing is multi-layered, open to multiple interpretations. The YouTube videos focus on duality, and the I Ching offers a really insightful way to understand the interplay of forces at work in the creative process. And the art book's emphasis on the title, the wordplay, and the connection to other artists helps to situate Camblin's work within a broader art historical context.
You're right. It's not about choosing one interpretation over the other. It's about recognizing that both can offer valuable insights and that the meaning of the work can continue to evolve as we bring our own experiences and perspectives to the table.
Exactly. And I think that's what Camblin would have wanted. Remember, he was all about encouraging his students to do their own thing, to find their own unique voices. He wasn't interested in dictating answers. He was interested in sparking conversations and inspiring new ways of seeing.
So, as we move towards wrapping up our deep dive into Bob Camblin, I think it's clear that he was more than just a painter or a sculptor. He was a philosopher, a provocateur, and a champion of artistic freedom.
And his legacy continues to inspire us to think differently, to challenge assumptions, and to embrace the mysteries and complexities of the creative process.
Okay, before we go, I want to circle back to one more of his quotes that I think sums up his spirit perfectly. Ecology of art, I keep telling my students to do your own thing. Know thyself, but I never thought about using the example of ecology and the people that study it. One can hear many valid reasons that an artist should be this or that. Why should he be involved socially, politically, or with religious attitudes? And some should, but rather than judge. Why not assume that in really trying to do his thing, it may have something to do with our balance of nature some may serve, who only seem to indulge themselves? Once upset, this balance can wreak havoc. Man is the worst offender in changing his physical world. Maybe the artists are some of the few that are fighting for existence when everything around us wishes us to be in, for, or about. And yet he is just being not in conflict, not destroying, trying to be in a world gone very wrong, and he may have no effect whatsoever and eventually becomes extinct. Camblin, circa 1968. It's a bit of a mouthful, but there's so much wisdom packed into this one.
There really is. He's drawing a parallel between the diversity of the natural world and the diversity of artistic expression. Just as a healthy ecosystem needs a wide range of species to thrive, perhaps a healthy culture needs a wide range of artistic voices, even those that seem unconventional or even self-indulgent.
It's like he's saying, don't try to fit in, don't try to please everyone, follow your own path, even if it seems strange or difficult. That's how you make a real contribution to the world.
And that message, I think, is more relevant today than ever before. In a world that can often feel increasingly homogenized and driven by trends, Camblin's work reminds us of the importance of individuality, authenticity, and the courage to forge our own creative paths.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? It's like so much passion in that quote, so much conviction, and a little bit of that playful defiance. It's like he's saying, don't underestimate the power of art, even when it seems like it's just for the artists themselves. There's a ripple effect. There's a connection to something bigger.
Yes, and that connection to something bigger, that's what he's talking about with the ecology of art idea. He's suggesting that artists play a really crucial role, in maintaining a kind of balance in the world, a balance that's easily disrupted when everyone's pressured to conform, to fit in. It's like by following their own unique creative paths, they're adding to the richness, the diversity of the cultural landscape.
I love that. I love that analogy. It's like in nature, you need a huge variety of plants and animals to create this really thriving, ecosystem. And maybe it's the same with art. Like we need all these different expressions, all these different voices to have a truly vibrant culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that idea, it ties back to our discussion of Laura's fan mail. Remember how the YouTube video talked about the importance of embracing youthful folly, that willingness to experiment, to make mistakes, and how the art book highlighted the connection to surrealism and neo-expressionism, movements that were all about pushing boundaries and challenging those conventions. Maybe those are all expressions of that same ecology of art that Camblin was talking about.
It's like a thread that runs through all of his work and through all of these different art movements. This idea that real creativity requires like a certain amount of freedom, this willingness to go against the grain and explore what we don't know.
And it's not just about creating, those pretty pictures, is it?
No.
It's about engaging with the world,
Yeah.
asking those tough questions, maybe even shaking things up a bit.
Yeah, it's about using art as a tool, right? For
Yeah.
exploration, for figuring yourself out, for commenting on society, for making sense of the world, maybe even changing the world in ways big or small.
Yeah, I think you've got it. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Bob Camblin, what do you think? What's the most important takeaway for our listener? What's the thing you really hope they remember about this artist and his work?
I think for me, it's about that do your own thing mentality. Camblin was such a huge advocate for individuality, for finding your unique voice, expressing it without fear. And that's a message that, really means something no matter what your passion is. Art, music, writing, science, anything.
I agree completely. And I think another really important takeaway is that art isn't always about finding the right answer or that one interpretation. It's about embracing the mystery, the ambiguity, the layers of meaning that kind of unfold over time. Remember what Camblin said about explaining something and killing it. Sometimes you just got to sit with the work, let it wash over you, trust your own intuition.
That's a great point. It's like in this rush to kind of analyze and categorize everything, we forget to feel it, to let it move us, to let it challenge us.
Exactly. So listener, as you continue to explore art or even, maybe explore your own creativity, remember Bob Camblin and his message of individuality, experimentation, embracing the unknown. Don't be afraid to get messy, make mistakes, follow your own unique path. You never know where it might lead you.
That's a good one. All right, so thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been awesome exploring Bob Camblin's world with you. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you for listening.
We hope you found it inspiring, something to think about. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.